The story begins with two monks in the middle of some vigorous training on a rope bridge in Tibet. After defying the laws of physics with high-flying maneuvers and a brief power struggle for control of their bowstaffs, the younger of the two defeats the older, though saves his master from falling. At their temple, the unnamed monk's told that he's fulfilled 3 prophecies that now grant him the right to be his master's predecessor. The abbey's entrusted with guarding a sacred scroll that gives its reader the power to turn the world into paradise or destroy it. With the master monk having spent the last 60 years protecting the scroll himself, he passes on his power, sending the skies gray and the surrounding monks to their knees, while a group of German soldiers are shown to have found the artifact's location. Being that it's 1943, the soldiers are Nazis and are here in their pursuit of power. With the master now looking every part his age, he steps out of the temple to begin his long-awaited retirement, only to be shot down. The rest of the monks do what the placid people can to keep the soldiers' leader Strucker from obtaining the scroll, but when he's not satisfied they will be of any use to him, he has the whole line mowed down. 2 of his officers enter to retrieve what he's come for, but are instantly expelled from the temple with their weapons destroyed. Strucker's then jumped by an angry Capuchin before the monk leaps out and defeats each soldier, with them doing more damage to each other than their enemy. When Strucker exclaims that the monk's not bulletproof, he telegraphs his gunshot, allowing the monk to use his newfound powers to at least avoid the shots. But when he finally runs out of cover and mountaintop, his above-average speed can't avoid a bullet as Strucker lands a gutshot, sending him tumbling off the cliff. Having taken the scroll from the temple, the treasure hunter looks over the edge to see both the monk and everything he's searched for is missing. 60 years later in New York City, and pickpocket cars working through a subway station. One of the pockets turns out to belong to a police officer, but Car's much faster than he is and leaves him cuffed to a railing. Outside, the nameless monk still hasn't aged a day and has spent the last 6 decades being chased. While one of them runs down and the other runs up, the 2 paths cross and their colliding pursuers knock a girl onto the train line. With her ankle stuck, the 2 leap down to save her together, where Car witnesses the monk's powers when he bends solid steel, allowing them all to escape unharmed. Having thrown his entire stash away to help the pickpockets, angry but is told by the monk that the true reward is saving a life. He refuses to tell Car why the men are chasing him, and when he sarcastically accepts the monk's apology, he steals the scroll without him even realizing. Car's suddenly jumped by a member of a local gang who doesn't like him pickpocketing on their turf. Their leader Funktastic requires 60% off the top to boost in the area, and when Car gives him the scroll as a tribute, they think he's making fun of them. The leader's girlfriend Jade chooses to get in on the fight, and the gang beats him around for a bit while the monk returns to watch. Car begins to hold his own when using a staff, and the monk notices that the pickpockets beginning the first of the 3 prophecies, which is to defeat a group of enemies while a flock of cranes circle above. Though not expecting him to win the fight, Monk decides to stay and see if he can fulfill it in any way. When Car begins to get a little too cocky, he drops his weapon, but luckily has Jade call Funktastic off, claiming that she's bored but just wanting to protect the stranger. When he leaves, Car is met by the monk, who congratulates him on his victory, though he owes it to the girl. Asking where Car learned how to fight, he says the Golden Palace, which Monk thinks is a temple, but is really just the Chinese cinema Car works at as the projectionist for old man Kojima, where he spends his nights imitating legends of martial arts, which directly translates to his athleticism and ability to swing a staff, though it's mostly just for show. In a second similarity to himself, the monk finds the pickpocket to be the most undisciplined youth he's ever laid eyes on, which is what his master once called him. Returning to his tiny apartment adjacent the projection room, Car finds the monk already making himself at home and eating a bowl of his cereal. He tells him to leave, but the monk says that an enlightened man would invite the stranger to stay. Then when he tries to make him, he avoids every shot while continuing to eat his bowl of cereal, then sitting the amateur down in his own seat. Car grew up an orphan and gave himself the name Car, which is Cantonese for family, since he never had one. After the monk corrects his pronunciation, telling him that his name's really Gar, he takes a nap in the bed with his scroll, but when Car returns from training, the monk's disappeared. That night, Jade ditches the Funktastic fan club when realizing that the sneaky stranger swiped her necklace during the fight. The next morning, Jade attends a human rights exhibition where she meets the director of the organization, Nina. Despite appearing to try to make a change for good in the world, Nina's the equally vile granddaughter of Strucker, who's unfortunately still alive. His time's running out and he scorns Nina for her men's failure to catch the monk during the subway chase. Meanwhile, the monk pickpockets the pickpocket to return his latest score to its owner. The two begin to argue again as Car's shown to give the homeless hot dogs, when Jade shows up demanding her stolen necklace. After introducing the foreign stranger as his bodyguard, the meeting's interrupted when Strucker's mercenaries show up again and the monk takes off. With Car's help, the two flee through the city when the monk begins to get surrounded. He uses his abilities to high-flyingly disarm two mercs and use their weapons to non-fatally take out men closing in. When more arrive, he slips one of their bullets in slow motion and hides away with Car in a laundromat that Strucker's men walk straight by. In the basement, the two are greeted by a secret society of monks headed by brother Tenzin. While Monk and Tenzin speak alone, Karl meets a young monk who shakes his hand, but they begin to have a show of pride seeing who will let go first. Since it's been 60 years, the monks have been training a replacement to protect the scroll, and muscles here is their number one choice. With the prophecy applying to everyone, Monk believes Karl to be the chosen one, having already performed the first trial, and offers to train him after first treating his hand with an ointment made from his own urine. They go to an abandoned warehouse where the monk sees what he can do while avoiding everything, then tells him that air is like any other element and that the enlightened can step across it like stones. Suddenly Strucker's mercs show up in an attack chopper covering the level with gunfire while ground troops surround the building. The two flee to the rooftop where the monk leaves Karl for a moment and leaps onto the helicopter, eliminating everyone on board and leaping off to let it crash. As Karl's dragged over the edge of the building by a falling satellite dish, Monk just manages to save him, but the scroll falls off right into the clutches of Nina. However, when she delivers it to her grandfather, he finds it's the monk's recipe for noodle soup, with the real thing being tattooed on his body all along as a security measure. The two get back to the Golden Palace and find that Jade left her address earlier with Kojima while looking for Karl. Realizing something's wrong, they race upstairs to find the old-timer dead, having also had a visit from Nina. The monk decides to abandon Karl out of shame, but filled with a newfound purpose, he collects his things and tracks him back down to the laundromat, being stopped at the door by these two lovely ladies. Shortly after, Nina and her grandfather's mercs show up, forcing the heroes to flee, having been tipped off by the young monk who's betrayed his own people to share in the power of the scroll. Though he never sees that power, as he's taken along with all the other monks to Strucker's secret laboratory beneath the museum, where they have their memory extracted, feeding the Nazi with information along with killing the monks in the process. The monk and Karl go to seek help from Jade and find that she's holed up in a mansion that they have to sneak into. To get inside, Karl must glide through the air like the monk does, and after first getting a read on the distance, he makes the high leap to the window in his first great feat. He locates Jade in the grand living room and they begin fighting, with Karl using the necklace to try get a date, but after a few moments of light sparring, Jade ends up knocking him unconscious. Having been waiting outside with the dogs, the monk enters, congratulating her, when she explains the reason for the house and security is that she's the daughter of an imprisoned crime lord. When the monk hears her name, he realizes Karl's fulfilled the second prophecy, which is to battle for love in the palace of Jade. In yet another surprise attack, the mercs breach the compound, shooting Monk with a tranquilizer dart. Nina takes him back to the museum while the disorientated Jade recognizes her from the exhibition that morning. Surmising that's where they would have taken him, she chooses to help Karl rescue him with her armored SUV and collection of explosives. They breach the gates of the museum, attracting the entire courtyard of guards to the vehicle, when it explodes, having been a decoy, while the pair make their way in through an underground tunnel. After Nina's finished scanning the monk's tattoos and digitizing the text, he's brought before his old rival once again. After searching for 60 years, Strucker is finally able to read the scroll, and begins to change back into his youthful self. However, the last verse is missing, which the proud monk says he cleverly memorized. Angered by this, Strucker makes preparations to scan the monk's brain for the information which will kill him in the process. Jade and Karl make their way inside through a water pipe connected to Strucker's machine, and when he powers it on, an incoming stream separates the two, flushing Karl down. Jade goes on but is intercepted by Nina and the two begin to fight, during which Nina pulls out a hidden weapon, but Jade breaks her leg with a kick, then casually snaps her neck. Washing down into the base of Strucker's lab, Karl shows up just as he's beginning the operation on the monk. He leaps at Strucker, getting caught in the air and thrown to the side by his newfound powers, but allowing the monk to escape. Using his super strength, Strucker badly damages the monk, and when his arm's broken, he just snaps it back into place and keeps on going. During the fight, the monk saves Karl from being impaled on a broken pipe, but they crash into the elevator shaft and wind up in the lift. When it opens, Strucker's already on the roof and they continue the battle. Karl's taken out of commission straight away with a pile of scaffolding dropped on top of him, while the monk and Strucker go head to head, eventually taking their fight atop a glass billboard belayed off the edge of the roof. Karl regains consciousness just as the monk's being overpowered, despite the scroll being lost forever should he die. He leaps on the sign, grabbing Strucker and allowing the monk to regain his footing, but is overpowered himself and used as leverage to get the final verse. With motivation from his master, Karl defeats the Nazi by once again defying gravity and kicking him off the roof onto electric wires below. During this time, Jade frees the other monks and then reconnects with the other heroes in the museum. The nameless monk begins the transference of the scroll to Karl, sending all the text from his body and imprinting it onto his successor, leaving the monk looking every bit as 90 years old. Just then, Strucker returns, firing his gun wildly, hitting Jade, who jumped in the way of the other two. Able to dodge bullets now, Karl slips his shots and kicks Strucker into one of the museum statues, sending it crumbling down on top of him, killing him. To his surprise, Karl finds Jade still alive, having caught the bullet. after the power of the scroll also transferred to her since she also fulfilled all 3 prophecies, with the third being to free a group of people you don't even know. Sometime later in their snazzy leather outfits, the 2 new nameless monks meet with their master to receive the final verse. He whispers half of it in each of their ears, making them inseparable, and gives his goodbye hugs, after which he checks his pockets to make sure the pickpocket hasn't stolen anything from him again. Having given Kar a riddle earlier about why hot dogs come in packages of 10 but hot dog buns come in packages of 8, Kar can finally answer it.
You got it.
With that, the retired monk cheerfully disappears into the crowd for his retirement. And the movie ends.
See, the thing is that life doesn't always work out according to plan. So, be happy with what you got.
It's the bomb degree.
So you made it. I appreciate your time. I couldn't have done it without you. Tell your mother I said thanks.